From WNBC TV New York, this is Live at 5 with Jack Cafferty and Sue Simmons.
Our next guest on Live at 5 will always be associated, very nicely so, with one of Broadway's greatest musicals, Hello, Dolly. She will soon be starring in a new musical written by her good friend Jerry Herman. And this weekend, Carol Channing will take the stage of Caesar's Palace in Atlantic City. Liz Smith and I are so delighted to welcome Miss Channing back to Live at 5.
Isn't that a joy, Sue Simmons, to be opening at Caesar's?
I'm telling you.
I called my dear friend George Burns. He's opening at Caesar's in Las Vegas. And I said to him, George, do you think I'm up to singing at Caesar's? And he said, Carol, what are you worried about? Your voice is as good as mine.
No
Doesn't that give you confidence? Yes, I thought so. So I'm going to be there the 18th, 19th, and 20th of this month.
You're asking me, Carol, when you're going to be there.
Yes, I'm asking you, Liz.
I think that's right. I read it today. Carol, we want to ask you something.
Yes.
Frank Fields has been doing this wonderful series on stress.
I heard it.
And we want to ask you how you deal with no stress, because it's obvious you don't ever let stress bother you.
Liz, I'm glad you asked me that question. I've been listening all week long to Frank Fields carrying on about stress. Now, I personally, this is just my personal viewpoint, stress is God-given. Stress makes me smarter and more focused and more concentrated than I ever am any other time in my life. And all we have to do is know it and embrace it and love it and say, thank you, God, you gave us stress, because nothing good comes easy. And the deep soul satisfying thing of making a thing a success rather than a failure is far more less stressful than trying to avoid stress. Do you know what I mean? You know that the columns that you write that come the hardest are your best.
Well, that's true.
And every stage of creative work, and I'm sure if you make Cadillac automobiles, there's a certain stage when you look at that car and say, it's never going to run. The wheels aren't going to turn, and the darn thing is a total fiasco, and you go through this terrible stress. That's what makes it happen. That's what makes the success.
We have topped Frank
And
Fields.
if you don't have a childbirth, it's the law of nature. Nothing good comes easy. And what I feel is that performers and actors have the least trouble with stress, because the worst time we go through and the worst panic and fright is stage fright. Then we go straight on the stage and burn it all off. We sing and dance at the same time. We work up this terrible perspiration, you say on this show? Sweat. You work up this terrible sweat, and you carry on, and what happens is the stress can't go with it. You take that stress and make it. Myself, I'm brighter under stress. Learn to embrace it, love it, know it's God-given, and don't try to avoid it or you won't succeed.
You've obviously been under great stress through this last little thing that you've said, because you were brilliant.
Do you think I've been under
Yes.
great stress? Oh, I see what you mean.
Yes, because she...
Oh, I see.
See?
Reverse.
You said you operate best under stress, and you are operating top dollar right now.
I've been sitting here watching Frank all week, and everybody's saying, isn't it a shame? How do you avoid stress? You don't.
Face it on. Head on.
All right, Carol, now we don't want to change the subject, but we would like to drag you kicking and screaming into a discussion of Winnie the Pooh. What have you been doing with Winnie the Pooh?
We finished the last 3 days. I've had 25 children's albums, and Liz, they chose us for the Book of the Month Club for 1984.
How wonderful.
Yes, the Winnie the Pooh record.
You mean the record?
Yes, the record
And
is
what-
on the Book of the Month. For some strange reason, the record is on the, what do you call that when it's the you know, they have the
top of the, I don't know, the charts.
the charts. Anyway, so they chose us, and we
It means it's selling.
yes, it's like when you buy a subscription in the theater.
Oh, I see.
Anyway, they chose us for that, and it's all these children's records, and I get to do all the characters, Liz, because
Everyone?
everyone, you see, that's why I like it. I'm a hog.
I want to ask you a question, Carol. Do you ever think of doing something really serious? I mean, do you ever feel, you know, that thing about wanting to play Hamlet? You have
Yes,
such
well, I
great
am.
comic sense.
Well, you see, I do. I am. Nothing is funny unless it's terribly serious. Unless you approach it like Lady Macbeth. You know what I mean? I mean, it just isn't funny unless it's real. At least to Americans. Some Europeans think it's funny if you act funny, but we don't. It has to be so real that we have a kind of a kinetic reaction to it. I mean, we say, that happened to me, or that's my wife, or that's my mother. or yes, that's what she does, or that's what I do, or I've been in that terrible situation, or that's what makes us laugh because it's so real.
That's what makes me laugh. Slapstick makes others laugh.
Well, like Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh is a bear of very little brain, but he has stentorian tones, much like Winston Churchill. You know what I mean?
Right.
And Little Piglet is, you have to approach them very seriously. Piglet is the tiniest animal in the forest. And Little Piglet is forever doing its stoutness exercises. You know what I mean? And then we have, now I have to take the people I know. So Eeyore, who is very negative, is Jimmy Niederlander. Surely you know Jimmy Niederlander.
Yes, I do.
He's the man who owns all the theaters that the Schuberts don't own, which is half the theaters in the whole world. And Jimmy Niederlander is forever saying, I own 12 theaters on Broadway, and I'm not making a nickel profit. You know, that's Jimmy. Now, if you stay with Jimmy, Jimmy just took me on my Hello Dolly tour, and we just closed in Honolulu. You do win, just as you do with Eeyore. I mean, he's a sweet, dear man like Eeyore is.
And you're a sweet, dear person for being here.
Sue Simmons.
That's the ending cue.
Carol, you'll have to come back. We could do this for days.
I have to sing the final words with Jerry Herman. You know what? I got to see La Cage 4 times.
Look at poor Frank.
La
He's waiting
Cage.
over
And
there.
Jerry Herman sang, integrity, style, and mirth, Liz. Thank God that you left Fort Worth, Liz. Jerry Herman wrote those songs for Liz Smith.
I am who I am.
Is that it? You boys take it over there because they're never going to quit here.
Huh?
I said take it over there.
Carol, thank you for
Sue
coming.
Simmons,
Nice to see you.
Liz, dear, thank you.
Jack. Jack.
Thank you, Sue.